Welcome to Bible Reader Companion. Our Bible reading this week is Acts chapters 20 through 28 and Romans chapter 1. And our memory verse is taken from Romans chapter 1 and verse 16, in which Paul stated this: "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first and also for the Greek." We've seen how Paul desired to go to Rome to preach this gospel. He was not afraid, not ashamed to go to Rome and preach this gospel. We see that he wanted to preach this gospel because of the unrighteousness that exists in this world, and the righteousness is found in Jesus Christ. And then we looked yesterday at the fact that Paul, when being threatened with his life, turned to those who would kill him and tried to convince them of the need to change and become like him and become a disciple of Christ. And as we look today, we look at another example in Paul's life. This one now, he stands before a man by the name of Felix, a Roman governor, another person who can hold his fate in his hands. And when given the opportunity to stand before Felix, what does Paul do? He preaches. Begin with me in Acts chapter 24 and beginning in verse 10. Acts 24, beginning in verse 10, reading from the New King James Version. "Then Paul, after the governor had nodded to him to speak, answered, 'Inasmuch as I know that you have been for many years a judge of this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself, because you may ascertain that it is no more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with anyone, nor inciting the crowd, either in the synagogues or in the city, nor could they prove the things of which they now accuse me. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, so I worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. I have hope in God, which they themselves also accept, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and of the unjust. This being so, I myself always strive to have a conscience without offense toward God and men. Now after many years, I came to bring alms and offerings to my nation, in the midst of which some Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with a mob, nor with tumult. They ought to have been here before you to object if they had anything against me. Or else let those who are here themselves say if they found any wrongdoing in me while I stood before the council. Unless it is for this one statement which I cried out standing among them. Concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged." He goes on to say, when Felix heard these things, having more accurate knowledge of the way, he adjourned the proceedings and said, "When Lysias the commander comes down, I will make a decision on your case." And in verse 25, he says he reasoned about righteousness, self-control, the judgment to come. And Felix was afraid and answered, "Go away for now. When I have a convenient time, I will call for you." You know, Paul didn't care who he stood in front of. He was going to talk about Jesus and the resurrection and the gospel. It's what he did everywhere that he went. It didn't matter whether he was preaching in the synagogues of the Jews, preaching to the Gentiles, preaching to those who were about to try to kill him, preaching to a governor who held his fate in his hands. Paul was going to talk about Jesus. He was going to talk about the resurrection of the dead. He was going to talk about righteousness and unrighteousness. And you know that conversation centered around the need to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. Paul was never ashamed to talk about Jesus, to talk about the righteousness that's found in him, the unrighteousness that's in the world, and the need for us to put our faith and trust in him. Are we that confident? Do we speak that freely about Jesus? Do we demonstrate that kind of faith in our lives? I believe with all my heart that Paul believed wholeheartedly and lived completely his statement of Romans chapter 1 and verse 16. "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation, for the Jew first, and also for the Greek." We hope that we can live with the same kind of confidence and boldness. Thank you for thinking on these things, and we hope that you will join us again tomorrow.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more content like this.